Well, thank you very much. I'll say the Nigerian banking industry, and indeed most corporations in Nigeria, particularly the quoted ones, we've come a long way in terms of governance practices. Compared to what obtained in the past, a lot of emphasis is placed on corporate governance now. And you see this in terms of the way these companies are managed, the rules, the processes, the mechanisms that govern the way they conduct their business and their structure. So I'll say we've actually gone a long way, and we can still improve. There's still a lot of scope for improvement in terms of not just looking at what the rules say alone, but trying to internalize what the rules are all about, what they're intended to be, and to actually have it at the heart of the way organizations are actually managed and governed. So I expect that over time we should go beyond just the rules, but it should be like second nature, a way of life, beyond what the rules specify. Well, I think just like any board you will find in any responsible corporation, essentially the role of the board is the same. But I would say in a financial institution, the demand is even much more, because remember that banks are actually highly regulated all over the world. And this places a lot of responsibility on the directors. So the directors too, they are actually responsible to ensure that the company, they are actually run in a very safe manner. Remember, we are dealing with depositors' funds. And if you look at the nature of banking itself, it's a very risky business. It's all about managing risk. So I'll say for our board, they give direction, and they also provide the appropriate challenge to management and the executives on the board in ensuring that things are actually done properly. In terms of decision making, see, the primary objective is to ensure that the bank run in a very safe manner. I think that's the first thing. Safety is very important. Managing risk is also extremely very important. And of course, we're a business too. We want to be profitable. But you want to be profitable within the ambits of the law, and to do business in a very safe manner, whereby you make profit, but you don't jeopardize the interest of all the other stakeholders. So you need that balance is also always there, trying to strike the appropriate balance between making profit and operating in a very safe manner, not taking very stupid risk, and trying to mitigate the downside too in the business that you do. So essentially you find out that pool is always there, trying to strike that balance. And I think that should be the primary responsibility and the role of any board, really, in a bank. They've done exceedingly very well over the years, actually, in ensuring that banks play by the rules. For you to even be a director in a bank, you must go through a lot of due diligence, character check, credit check, quite a lot. So it's exceedingly very, very tedious, because the important thing is to get the appropriate and the right caliber of people to be directors in the bank, and people that also understand and appreciate what it is to run a business. You don't necessarily need to be a banker, but you must appreciate what it is when you talk about corporate governance, when you talk about good practices, and when you also talk about risk in business. So I would say the CBN, they've done very, very well in terms of bringing the appropriate policies, and also in terms of the monitoring of banks to ensure that they actually run their business in a very safe manner. So I'll probably say kudos to Central Bank for the great work they've done and they are doing. And I'll say they are also still improving and even going even beyond the board. There are some key positions in the bank today that before you can promote anybody to that level, which is termed part of the competency framework, Central Bank must approve. Like for you to be an executive director in the bank, the Central Bank must approve. For you to even be head of internal control and audit, for you to be head of compliance, for you to be head of financial control, and for you to be the head of risk management, central bank must approve. And they've also set benchmarks that such candidates must meet before they can be approved for such positions. So for central bank to go that far is actually similar to what you have in the UK by the Prudential Regulatory Authority, what they call the certified persons regime. I think we are practicing something similar, which we call competency framework in Nigeria here. But they are all the same. It's to ensure that you have the appropriate people and are also empowered to be able to provide adequate challenge independent of even the CEO and other executives in ensuring that things run in a very safe manner. I would say it is long overdue. I mean, this is what you have in most of the developed world. And companies definitely must operate within a minimum standard. I think that's really the objective. Everybody cannot set their rules, in as much as you try to adapt, but we must have a common platform where we say, look, this is the minimum. You cannot go below this, which I think is very brilliant. And I think I've looked at the draft, and I would like to say the Financial Reporting Council, they are doing a very good job. And even what they've gone through, having to go through the different zones to have these discussions with different stakeholders across the country, I think is very laudable. It's a very tedious process, but I think it's a very, very laudable approach to coming up with an acceptable code of governance for companies in Nigeria. So I think it's quite good, very good. No, I don't see any conflict there at all. You see, if anything, the code of corporate governance, which the Financial Reporting Council is working on, is not industry specific. So irrespective of the industry you operate, whether it's banking, whether it's finance, whether it's oil and gas, it affects you. Because come to think about it, when you talk about governance, it's all about the corporation, not the sector that you operate. But the central bank is focused on the financial service sector. And that's why I mentioned that banking is unique in a way. And really, what you can apply in some of the sectors, you probably need a stricter measure in the bank. Remember that the nature of what we are doing, we are holding depositors' funds. And these are, you can imagine if anything happens to any systemically important bank, what will be the impact on millions of account holders. So from that perspective, you start to appreciate the fact that, oh, look, banks are actually different. It's not like this oil company you say is owned by Mr. A, Mr. B. Banking is different. Banks are basically like public trusts. And that's why banking is actually unique. And that's why when you see major challenges in the banking industry, you see the government even getting involved. You saw what happened in 2008, 2009. Most of these major banks, look at what happened. The governments of the US, they have to get involved. The Senate had to get involved. The government of UK, all governments across the world, they had to get involved. Why are they not doing that for other corporations? It's because of the unique nature of the bank. It touches the life of the citizenry directly, not indirectly now. And that's, so I don't think there will be any conflict. If anything, what the CBN rules is basically to strengthen what the Code of Corporate Governance is, really. So in a way, they are aligned. But our policy, see, the first thing is you cannot avoid conflict in any situation, whether in the office, whether at home, anywhere, even where you have very identical twins, there are conflicts. Between spouses, there are conflicts. So why will there be no conflict in the office place between executives and non-executive directors? Naturally, it's bound to be there. And I say to a very large extent, it's very useful. Where you have people working and no conflict, everybody's fine, then there's probably something wrong somewhere. Either the non-executives are not providing the appropriate challenge to the executives, or the executives have found a way to just get their own things going. I think you need some measure of conflict. But the key thing is to have the right type of conflict, which I will call positive conflict. My advice is, one, focus on issues and not personalities. If you focus on issues, you'll find out that it's much easier, because at the end of the day, what are you looking at? Let the better reasoning prevail. I think that's really what matters. Articulate your points. Try as much as possible to be convincing, to have backups, to have support and all that. And try to listen to what they're doing. Sometimes the mistake we make is, as executives, is to say, look, what are they telling me? They are not bankers. For example, I'm the professional there. This guy is just a lawyer, just a real estate person, he's just an engineer on the board. What does he know about banking? But it's not true. As I've been on this board since 2005 of Zenith and boards of other companies, and experience has shown too that it is not necessarily the bankers that will give you the appropriate challenge or come up with the best ideas. No, it's probably people who are not in the industry at all that will come up with things, because they look at things innocently like a child, and they come up with very, very strong and powerful contributions. So the key is for you to have an open mind as an executive, that each of these directors, they come in with different perspectives. Hear them out, process what they have to say, and then you make your point. So when we focus on issues, you'll find out that, I don't know, even when we disagree, it's still very healthy. And over time, there's a consensus, and we just move on. And respect is also important. Once we respect each other's views, that look, this person is bringing something to the table, I think that should be very... So those are things that I call positive conflict, really. And it's important in any organization. Well, let me put it this way. There is a lot of challenges that banks face, and indeed the whole financial sector. Remember that Nigeria is a developing country, and whether we like it or not, we face some unique challenges, even when it comes to governance practices. You see, you cannot divulge or separate what happens in our society, really, from what happens in the different elements of the society, like companies and all that. You cannot. The type of bank you have, to a very large extent, will be a reflection of what you have in the society. If you have a lawless society, you have a very corrupt society, why do you think the bank will now be the saint? It's very unlikely. So in a way, it's a reflection of basically what you have. You go to some of the highly developed world, some of these things are talking about governance, it's like second nature. You understand? It's like teaching a child, yeah, don't tell lies or this. In many environments, you don't need to do that. It's already in their DNA. So that's why you can now see the type of peculiar challenges that we face in an environment like this, where quite a lot of things are not done appropriately. You now see the challenge that you will now face, even in your own organization, to say, look, we need to do things appropriately and all that. So it's really more of a reflection of the society. But in as much as we have those challenges, you yourself must try to enthrone those good practices. And it starts at the top. Once they see the way you do things, that look, we must follow. See, the key thing is make sure you follow the rules. Don't bend the rules. Do things appropriately. If you do that, it will be fine. Then you also have some of the competition we have in the industry, where people know this thing is wrong because Bank A is doing it, Bank B is doing it, and you think it's giving them a competitive edge. I always tell people that, look, banking is a marathon. It's not 100 meters and all that. Banks have existed for 200, 300 years. And that's what you should be focused on, not what profit am I making today. If you do that, you will lose the plot, and it will push you to do so many unethical things. Look at just 1993. How many banks do we have in Nigeria? 89. Before 1993, about 1990, 1989, we have almost about 169 banks. Where are they all today? No, where are they all today? Up until the last CBN governor before this, so when Soludo was there was in 2008 or thereabout, when he started the issue of the consolidation and all that. 2004 really, the consolidation. I say, look, I want only very few banks. They increase the capital base. The banks shrunk to 25. And I think the economy is better for it and all that. And we can do things properly. So really, if you look at banking from the perspective of it's a marathon, then you know it's a slow and steady thing. And what I can bet you is if you do the right things, you will never regret it. You will never regret it. It is not about how profitable am I today, but it's about the long haul. And if you look at the banks who have been very solid up till today, that's something very common with them. It must be, you have to be very disciplined. And it comes with a price, I must tell you. You will lose quite a lot of things. But I think at the end of the day, those things you think you are losing, they are even good for you to lose them. Because better things will come. You will be better respected, there will be growth, and at the end of the day, people will look at each organization, this is a quality organization, and that's an organization actually built to last. And I think to me, that is the simple thing. Do the right things consistently all the time, irrespective of the price that you have to pay. Even if you have to lose this business, lose this, you move on. I don't think so. I think, you see, let me start from Nigeria. You see, it's not about shouting corporate governance. Many people talk about corporate governance, they don't even know what they are talking about. It's not for you to be able to define it. Oh, you must have 2 independent directors. You must have the number of non-executive directors must be more than the number of executive directors. Those are the basics. You can have all those are what I call structural things or the rules. You can have all those things. But is corporate governance in your DNA as an organization? The answer is no. I will still say that there is still a long way to go. There is a long way to go, so it's not overflogged. We've not even started. But it's for us not to be hypocritical about it. It is for us to entrench it in everything that would. And once you do, it shows. So it's not overflogged. Globally, is it overflogged? I'll probably say no. But I think sometimes we tend to overemphasize certain rules as against what is entrenched in the organization. And when you look at some of those rules, or there's one bad behavior, because of that, you say, look, oh, no more this, no more that, no more that. So to some extent you can say, okay, yes, maybe we overflog it and tend to deviate from what we should be focused on. But on the whole, I think it is not overflow. But in Nigeria, we still have a long, long way to go. We've not even reached that stage. That's it, right? I can tell you. And I'm saying this because in Zenith Bank, we operate at least in one of the major financial centers in the world. We have a bank in London, in UK. And in Nigeria here, compliance is mandatory. Over there, you are actually expected to explain. So you could see that there are 2 different environments, but you can understand why they can do that over there. Over here, we are probably not yet ripe for that. We are probably not yet ripe. For you to say, look, oh, I've breached this procedure, I will report. You will not know, but even the one your regulator is coming, people are still trying to, you understand, hide or this or that, talk less of telling them to report it. They say nobody will report anything. So it is a function of how developed the society is. I don't think we are ripe for that. So what we are doing now is what we should do. It should be mandatory. Well, I'll say, you see, banking itself as a business, as I've defined before, if you look at banks as a public trust, then it starts to make sense to you in terms of what banks actually stand for. And this business must be done with utmost care. The important thing is to know what exactly the bank stands for. We are just like intermediaries. Take from the surplus unit, give to the deficit unit. That's banking. And whatever you are doing, always have in mind, am I optimizing value? What are the risks? What are the downside? And I think once you can do that, that itself will be fine. And you see, one thing is that traditionally banks have operated within certain rules. So when you talk about corporate governance and all that, it becomes easier for banks to appreciate what they're talking about, unlike other companies. Because the way we are structured, we are like, they've always been regulated by the central bank anyway, over time. Just like in UK, you have the PRA, in the US, you have the SEC and all that. We're always governed by rules. So when people talk about corporate governance, we're already operating within that in the banks. So it's other sectors who are just trying to grapple with what the issues are. So from a governance perspective, I would say, look, we are already entrenched in that. When you talk about sustainability and all that, that's a different matter entirely, which I'll probably say it is not completely, because really you are talking about basically your environment. You are trying to do business in an environmentally friendly manner and all that. So those are things that I even believe that every responsible organization should actually look at. And we actually practice that a lot here. But what we believe in is it's like a journey too, as I said. We must make it part of the way of life. I don't believe in we saying we want this certification, we want this to say we are compliant. It doesn't really mean so much to me. What means a lot to me is that whatever certification you are getting, make sure it's your way of life, not to prepare for it and say you now have it. Then the next day you go back to business as usual. No. It should be a way of life, whatever it is that we are doing. So that's really the way I want to look at those three elements. It's a very massive challenge, particularly looking at the fact that we are operating in a very tough environment where discipline is not necessarily our second nature. We're in an organization where things are in an environment where things are not done properly at different levels. And talking about governance within that framework is a massive challenge compared to other environments. So I'll say all hands must be on deck. It's not just the Society of Corporate Governance in Nigeria that will do it alone. It's everybody. So all hands must be on deck, and let's appreciate the fact that the journey is just starting. We have a lot to do, and all of us, and we must continue to sensitize the whole environment. But in all, I want to give kudos to the Society of Corporate Governance in Nigeria. The people are doing a very good job, but there's still a lot to be done. And I think that's really what my closing remark will be.